Okay, I'm going to try to get this recorded today because I don't know how tomorrow's going to go. To Ahrensbach. We return to the castle to find our guests from Dunkelfelder all wearing bright smiles and Sylvester's group looking especially conflicted. And I suspected that her scolding was on the horizon, but I stated my resolve nonetheless. Sylvester, I have decided to become the next of Ahrensbach. I know. Wait. Huh? I made up my mind on the trip here and elected to make this my first reveal, aware that Sylvester would feel the brunt of my absence greater than anyone. But I mean, weren't they already preparing for you to move anyway? It's just you're moving not further away, you're moving closer. You're going to be closer than they expect. So this isn't that bad, considering, like I said, they've already been preparing for your departure anyway. How, then, was he already aware of my intentions? It didn't make any sense. What do you mean, I asked. You understand the consequences of my move to Ahrensbach, correct? Ehrenfest will... Of course he knows, Lady Rosemine, Hannelore interjected, but even then the magnanimous Ob Ehrenfest granted you his permission. Ah. Hannelore's and Heischit's smiles, the distant look in Sylvester's eyes, the pieces all suddenly snapped together. Ehrenfest had thus far remained passive in its diplomacy with greater duchies, but our archducal family must not have stood a chance against Dunkelfelder once they'd sat across from each other at the negotiating table. Sylvester cleared his throat. It will be utterly ridiculous to permit you to steal Ahrensbach's foundation and then prevent you from becoming its Ob. His voice sounded especially coarse, like he was trying to emulate Heischit's. Moreover, I must recognize that a Zent candidate with the Gridschite ranks even higher than the current royal family. Apparently, I was starting to worry whether this really was okay. Hannelore had given me her support, at least, so I suppose that her duchy was right behind me. Probably. If you intend to return the Gridschite to Jürgen Schmidt, Sylvester continued, you're fated to leave Ehrenfest anyway. Ahrensbach or the sovereignty, no matter which one you choose, I'm told the movement of your luggage and personnel will remain largely unchanged. That is true, that's what I was saying, because her moving to the sovereignty, she was already planning on moving to the sovereignty anyway, so her going to Ahrensbach instead isn't that big a deal. Indeed, Hartmut added, looking especially enthusiastic, we'll need to move quite a few Grey Priests and Shrine Maidens to Ahrensbach's temple, but that should not impact Ehrenfest's overall mana or taking Blue's Wood. Or as taking Blue's Wood. Their successors can be trained up from there. Hartmut was about to launch into a long speech, no doubt wanting to announce that everything was ready for my departure, but Sylvester shook his head. I am well aware of the situation, he muttered, looking exhausted. I am so pleased we are in agreement, Ob Ehrenfest, Hannelore said with a satisfied smile of a victor. She then shot a glance at her retainers, who were patting themselves on the back. Oh God, they help with this. Sylvester, I really am sorry this came at such an inconvenient time, I said, suddenly struck with the urge to apologize to him from the bottom of my heart. I did not know things would turn out like this when I was leaving for the temple. He waved away my words like he was shooing a bothersome pest. There's no need for that. Ferdinand agreed to negotiate with the royal family on Ehrenfest's behalf, and intends to return to Ahrensbach with you in preparation. How could I refuse him? Besides, with Georgine gone, my only real burdens are the royals and you. There's a lot I want to say about how these dramatic twists and turns are always throwing me for a loop, but they'll cease to be a problem by the end of the next Archduke Conference. I can hold my tongue until the dust has settled. Did you not ask me to stop fixating on Ehrenfest and find happiness in Ahrensbach? Ferdinand asked, a grin playing on his lips. I simply mean to live as you requested, dear brother of mine. Sylvester's cheek twitched. You're always pulling stunts like this, he grumbled, his expression a mix of exasperation and joy. I mean, this is actually a good thing anyway, because now Ahrensbach and Ehrenfest will not only be on way better terms than before, but I'm sure that Ferdinand would be allowed to go and visit Sylvester and them as he pleased. So it's not like he's going to be away from Ehrenfest forever. As I watched the two brothers back and forth, I'd started to wonder whether they'd forgotten about our guests. This was how they normally acted when they were alone together. Do whatever you want, Sylvester concluded. But Sylvester, I said, what about Ferdinand's Geduld? You mean those labs you're making for him, right? I'm glad one of us gets to have some fun at least. Sylvester was making a huge mistake. Ferdinand only wanted a lab in Ahrensbach as a last resort. His true desire was to have one here in Ehrenfest, but that idea had already been rejected. What makes you think he wants it in Ehrenfest, considering, yes, Ehrenfest is technically his Geduld, but how is he going to get there? Thank you. Those laboratories aren't his Geduld, I said. Ehrenfest is. That's why I think you should make him a lab here so he can return home whenever he wants. We don't have the time or resources for that. If you promised him a lab, then you can provide it. The rest of us need to sort out this Gerlach estate you destroyed. Ferdinand told me he messed with its foundation so much that we'll need to remake the whole thing from scratch. Wow, what did he do to it? That's what I want to know. My sincerest apologies, I cried, my head in my hands. I'll send you the gold dust for it right away. You would do well not to make promises you cannot keep, Ferdinand noted, his eyes fixed on our guests. He was right. I might have had enough mana to create the gold dust, but I wasn't going to make any headway with my fear of touching face stones. Yeah, that's a problem. I slumped my shoulders, having once again been reminded how useless I was at the moment. You need not rush to repay him, Ferdinand said, and gave me a light pat on the shoulder. Once we are back in Ahrensbach, we shall send aid and monetary assistance under the guise of reparations. Furthermore, though, you seem adamant to return me to Airfest. Sylvester no longer needs me to complete his duties as the Ob. He is doing well enough on his own. As long as I am permitted to come home on occasion, I am perfectly fine with this arrangement. Thank you. That's what I'm saying. He should be able to come home a lot more frequently than he was able to before. He wasn't able to leave before. But since it's you and Sylvester, and as long as the king decrees it and it's fine, he should be able to come visit a lot more. I'm not so cold as to refuse you, Sylvester retorted. I'll take care of your estate. They were speaking like everything was already set in stone. Ferdinand, I said, are you sure you want to live in Ahrensbach? You aren't doing this as a self-sacrifice, are you? He shook his head. Need you be so annoyingly stubborn? I am more than capable of making my own decisions. Seems like he's already focused on his own happiness for once, Sylvester chimed in. You're giving him 3 labs, right? This sounds like payment enough. Just let him do what he wants. I squeezed my hands in tight fists. Very well, in that case, as the next Ob Ahrensbach, I shall create an environment to which he can do as much research as he desires. Rest assured, Sylvester. Oh my god. I'm sure of his happiness. The way you're saying it. Oh my god, read the room. You say you're not in love with Ferdinand, but this is kind of showing it. Or showing the opposite of what you're saying. Sylvester burst into laughter, while Karstad, who was standing as his guard, merely coughed a few times in a poor attempt to mask his amusement. Handler was staring at me like she wanted to shout, so close! That's what I'm saying! Ferdinand seized my shoulder in a vice-like grip. Rose mine. I understand your motivation and resolve. There's no need to say any more. Ferdinand, have your ears gone? Be silent. Okay. Yeah, read the room, dude! Riordan then came to report that the teleportation circle was ready and the border gate had been contacted. Adelie and Grisha were among those who entered with her, as were Lenore and the others who had made their preparations while not on duty. The scholars wished to send over everyone's belongings, Riordan continued. Travel to the border gate to accept them if you would. Alright, Sylvester nodded and went out to the balcony and made his high beast. Let's go. We were headed to the teleporter at the Knight's training ground. The necessary arrangements must have already been made, as even the Dunkelfeldrians had mobilized without the slightest hesitation. I must have been more out of the loop than anyone. Yeah. Yeah, you are. Ferdinand, I said, you've been keeping me in the dark, haven't you? It feels like I'm the only one who doesn't know what we're doing. I will elaborate on my high beast. Hurry. I did as instructed and we took to the sky. Ferdinand explained curtly and in a quiet voice that he had proposed this method of transportation, overusing my panda bus to disguise my fear of using face stones. Yeah, she's gonna have to get over that fear at some point, hopefully. We will use teleporters meant for taxed goods to send your luggage to the border gate, he continued. Then we will move it all to Ahrensbach's castle. Ahrensfest's side of the border gate has already been made aware, and it seems safe to assume that the same is true for Ahrensbach's side. How come these teleporters aren't used when someone marries into another duchy, I asked. They seem so convenient because, yeah, they could be used as to attack. My mind wandered to all the luggage we'd crammed into Leslie back when Ferdinand was moving to Ahrensbach. Accepting such items from another duchy would pose too great a security risk. That's what I'm saying. So an Ob would never allow them to be teleported straight to the castle. However, as you are the new Ob Ahrensbach, this is merely a convenient way to send your luggage back to your new home. There is nothing to be on guard against. Aside from that, there's also the mana cost to consider. You are supplying it on this occasion. It took longer to send items by carriage, but they were by and large the most affordable option. We were electing to use the teleportation circles this time only because I would need my luggage immediately upon my return. My clothes for tomorrow wouldn't arrive in time if sent by carriage. You will not be in Ahrensbach for long, Ferdinand continued. We will make the Bible in my workshop there to prepare for the duchy's remaining nobles to participate in the Archduke Conference. Your move proper and the arrangements for your becoming the Ob will need to wait until you have received the king's approval. I've got a feeling that this isn't gonna... This little moment of, I guess, peace before the next crisis in the Royal Academy will not last long. Our top priority was making the magic tool Grudashite so that we can negotiate with the royal family. Yeah, that's what you need to do. We arrive at the knight's training grounds and use its huge teleporter to move to the border gate between Ehrenfest and Ehrensbach. It had relieved me to learn that my fear of face stones didn't include channeling mana into magic circles. Good. Knights of both Ehrenfest and Ehrensbach were already at the gate when we arrived, and my luggage was moved between the two duchies' teleporters. Lesletta and Gracia were leading a group who were checking the labels and such. Rosemine, Ferdinand said, we will need to use the teleporters quite regularly for the rest of the day. If you need a rejuvenation potion, drink one now while you have the chance. We were going to send Justice, my attendants, and my scholars to Ehrensbach's castle with my belongings. Ferdinand and I would take the guard knights back to the border gate and teleport to Bindewald with the volunteers, who would then make their way to the gate connecting Ehrensbach to Dunkelfelder. I do not know how many times we will need to activate the teleporter to move all 100 knights, Ferdinand said. Dang. Are you sure we should not simply return home by high beast? Handler asked, sounding concerned, but Ferdinand shook his head. It had taken them an entire day to reach Bindewald, so who knew how long they would need to travel to reach Dunkelfelder, which was all the way on the other side of Ehrensbach. Place a teleporter here and start preparing to teleport everyone, Ferdinand instructed me. By the time it was done, we had made contact with Sergius in Ehrensbach's castle and Strahl in the Bindewald estate. Nendlussel, Ehrensbach. I made sure that Justice, Lesletta, Gracia, Hartman, and Clarissa were all standing on the teleporter with me before activating it. With some help from Ferdinand, of course. They would spend their time at the castle putting my belongings away and preparing my room, among other things. Letizia came to welcome us when we arrived, so I entrusted my retainers to her. Then I activated the teleporter again, returning Ferdinand and myself to the border gate. Ab Ehrenfest, I said, we will send word once the date for our meeting with the royal family has been established. I don't expect this to work, but I'll say it anyway. Don't do anything crazy, alright? Yeah, I'm not sure I could promise that. I averted my eyes in lieu of a response. Making our own Grudashite so that we could negotiate with the royal family was sure to be crazy by anyone's standards. Just what are you two planning? Sylvester asked, his eyes narrowing. I must ask that you make haste in calculating the damages of the recent invasion, Ferdinand interjected with a smile, completely disregarding the question. That information should prove most useful during the Archduke Conference. Ferdinand must have realized that he was pushing his luck. He started rushing Hannelore and the others to pour mana into the teleporter without even waiting for a response. He ignored Sylvester's demands for an explanation and told me to hurry up as well. Nendlussel, Bindewald. In the blink of an eye, we teleported to our destination, having successfully escaped Sylvester. Strahl and the Dunkelfelder Knights were all standing in neat rows in anticipation of our arrival. Ab Ehrensbach, Lord Ferdinand, welcome back, Strahl said, his tone heavy and severe. We have been waiting for you. As it turned out, Dunkelfelder's knights had devoured all the food and alcohol in the Bindewald summer estate. Haha, knew that was coming. They had divided themselves into groups the following morning and set up a dinner tournament. Ehrensbach's knights had been forced to participate and couldn't even begin to hide their exhaustion, in stark contrast to their Dunkelfelder peers, who looked as satisfied as ever. It was clear to see which duchy had the most stamina. Oh, yeah. We shall now start teleporting everyone to Dunkelfelder's border gate, Ferdinand announced. Yes, sir, the volunteers chorused in response. At most, only about 30 knights could stand on the teleporter at once. I started teleporting my own guards as well as the knights, while Ferdinand received reports about the state of our current province and old Workstock. The Bindewald estate had been closed until the end of the Archduke Conference, wherein a new guide would surely be assigned to it. My apologies for the wait, Lady Hannelore. Oh no, there's no need to apologize, she replied, especially not when you are going to all this trouble for our sakes. Hannelore instructed the remaining knights to move on to the teleporter. 3 round trips had made me feel so sick that I wanted nothing more than to rest, but I couldn't quit now. This was the last one. I rubbed my temples and took a few deep breaths. Teleportation sickness? Ferdinand asked. Yes, most likely. Then I'll perform this last one with you. Strahl, return to the castle, but leave 5 guards behind to watch over the estate. Yes, sir. Ferdinand then stood atop the teleporter with Eckert, and the two of them helped to supply it with mana. It wasn't long before we all appeared at the border gate connecting Ehrensbach to Dunkelfelder. The knights who had arrived ahead of us were waiting in uniform rows. Lady Hannelore, we are so greatly indebted to you and your knights, I said. How can we ever thank you? My new hairpin alone feels like more than enough, she replied, then let out a quiet gasp. Oh, but I would appreciate a special invitation to the Archduke Conference, seeing as I am too young to attend otherwise. I wish to see you, the divine avatar of Messinora, bestow the Grudashite upon the Zent with my very own eyes. Excuse me? The heck is all this divine avatar business? Talk about exaggeration. My sainthood was swiftly transforming into something else entirely. Hannelore's calm, bright smile was starting to seem ominous, and something told me Hartman was to blame. Yep, most likely. Lady Handler, I said. Very well, Ferdinand interrupted. That sounds like fair compensation for your assistance. I shall broach the idea with your Ob and make whatever arrangements are required on my end. I thank you ever so much, Handler replied. Oh, Lady Rosemite, isn't this exciting? Huh? Isn't what exciting? Paying no attention to my confusion, Handler turned to her knights and shouted, Salute the divine avatar of Mestanora, she who shall return the Grujashite to Jürgenschmidt. The knights thumped the left side of their chest twice in perfect unison. And with that, Lady Rosemite, may we meet again at the Archduke Conference. Hold on a second. Just 1 second. Before I could even try to stop them, Handler and the knights took their leave in an orderly fashion. I could only watch in a daze as their high beasts vanished into the distance. What was that all about? I asked Ferdinand. We're going to make me the next Ob Ahrensbach, aren't we? I don't see why Lady Handler thought it necessary to call me a divine avatar, nor why she stated as though it were fact. Hartman was insistent that you would end up in serious danger unless we put you on a higher pedestal than the royals. If you wish to know more, then ask him for the details when we return. He held his hand for me. If your teleportation sickness is too much, we can travel the rest of the way by high beast. We are not too far from the city of Ahrensbach. The only thing making me queasy right now is this unsettling news. Let's use the teleporter again. I need to interrogate Hartman at once. Welcome back, Lady Rosemite and Lord Ferdinand. Letizia said once we were back at the castle, looking somewhat pale. A letter from Lady Detlinde arrived in your absence. She seems quite irritated that she is unable to return to Ahrensbach. Ha ha! Ha ha ha! You lost! We were handed the letter in question, which I started reading at once. What's all this about the Foundation being stolen and a new Ob taking over? I'm on the cusp of seizing the throne. Lords Leonzio and Gervasio are both with me. I swear this new Ob will pay the price of their insolence soon enough. We already knew we had to arrest Detlinde, one of the driving forces behind this whole incident, but reading her rant almost knocked the wind out of my sails. One had to question how much thought she was putting into her actions, if any. Lord Ferdinand, do you know whom she meant by Lord Gervasio? Letizia asked easily. I visited the Lanzanov estate on many occasions, but never once encountered a man by that name. I think so, Ferdinand replied, his true emotions hidden behind a fake smile. As I recall, he was the man raised to become the king of Lanzanov. Oh, great. So, essentially, I think Ferdinand's brother? I guess? I'm guessing it's his brother? Because it was, if I remember correctly, they take the first male child, and then they kill off the rest, essentially. Or take the one with, I guess, with the most mana or whatever. So, yeah, so Ferdinand's brother. Making the Bible. If what Detlinde says is true, and Leonzio is not the only member of Lanzanavian royalty here in Jürgenschmidt, then we must be quick, Ferdinand said. Rosemite, we are going to my workshop. Weren't we going to spend today listening to reports from those who stayed in Ahrensbach? That can wait. Order for them to be given to Justice and Hartman instead. Like in Ehrenfest, Ahrensbach's teleporter was located in its training area, and only was much further away from its castle's main building. Ferdinand sent out several ordinances, then put me on his high beast and took flight. So, we're going to your workshop, right? I asked. Yes, in the west building. If we hurry, we should be able to finish before dinner. By his workshop, Ferdinand meant his hidden room. We arrived at his chambers to find them in exactly the same state as before, torn apart from the Lanzanavians' rampage. I couldn't help but scrunch up my nose at the sorry sight. What a mess. The walls and decorations were marred with cuts and scratches, and there was broken furniture scattered all over the place. I asked for what remained of my belongings to be moved into a guest room, Ferdinand informed me. Sergius has done just that, so you have somewhere to rest, Justice noted as he pushed a small trolley of Ehrenfest ingredients over to the workshop's entrance. The luggage we teleported earlier has been taken there as well. None of us thought you would need to use your workshop so soon. Cornelius was following along as my knight when he suddenly cried, Wait, Lord Ferdinand, aren't you and Lady Rosemont going to be alone in your workshop? If so, I must protest, no matter the circumstances. If nothing else, allow a few guards to join you, or some scholars to assist with the brewing. Anyone who wishes to join us may do so, but I warn you, do not get in my way. I act only for a lack of time. Ferdinand took the trolley from Justice and proceeded into his hidden room. Eckert stood outside as his guard, then pointed at the entrance with his chin as though telling us to hurry inside. I nodded and made my way through. Wait, Ferdinand normally has a mana-dependent barrier blocking the entrance to his hidden room, right? Yeah, the one in the temple, yes. I don't know if it's the case here. I'm assuming. That had been the case for his hidden room in the temple, and it seemed unlikely that he hadn't set one up here in Ahrensbach where he was at much greater risk. I waited for Cornelius and the others to follow me inside, but they weren't able to, as expected. That's what I thought! Ferdinand, it would appear your barrier stopped Cornelius from joining us. Yes, it certainly would appear that way, he replied. The magic tool used to communicate through the hidden room's door flashed, and a single message from Cornelius came through. Please disable the barrier. No. Ferdinand replied, if you wish to enter, then obtain more mana. You're too late. I can't really do that now. Eckert, do not disturb us until dinner. Bind anyone who causes too much of a fuss. Ferdinand turned away from the door to look at me. Rosemine, come here. I should give you a medical examination now while there is nobody around to complain about it. Having a clear understanding of your health is of the utmost importance. True. Need to know that considering of how everything has gone down since, since she came back, essentially. At once he started touching my cheeks and neck as he normally did when inspecting my health. He carried out various checks, then grumbled that I had gotten better at putting up a front. Should you not praise me for becoming more ladylike, I asked, my lips pursed. I couldn't believe he was complaining now that I was finally conforming to the demands of noble society. In response, Ferdinand pinched my cheek and said, excellent work. I can't say this feels very sincere. Your mana is even more unstable than I expected. That might be why so much escapes you when you pray. A blessing large enough to fly outside the city was not necessary for mourning the dead or healing the wounded. Oh, okay, that's why he told you to stop. I prayed for everyone who died, be they friend or foe, and because I hailed the soldiers with my eyes closed, I was unable to see how much mana I was using. Ferdinand grimaced, was there really any need to mourn our enemies? It might not have made sense by the standards of Jürgen Schmidt, but it was important to me. Another custom from over there, then? Classic Ferdinand, he's so as perceptive as always. I would not normally criticize you for acting in a manner befitting a saint, he continued, but you must be more cautious of your mana quantity. An excessively large blessing could do more harm than good to manless commoners. Take care to keep your eyes open if you ever need to heal them again. Was it really that excessive? It enveloped almost the entire city! Jesus, dude! Keep your eyes open when you're doing blessings from now on! That had probably been because I'd wanted to heal everyone in Ehrenfest who had taken part in the battle, but of course anyone who hadn't known that would have seen it as exorbitant. Then again, now that we can no longer use face stones to drain your overflowing mana, I suppose your prayers do have some merit. Ferdinand peered down at me, frowning. My sudden growth spurt, coupled with the Jareve having dissolved my mana clumps, meant I posed a tremendous threat to anyone around me when my mana was this unstable. Insomnia, a reduced appetite, this newfound fear of face stones. Do you have any other symptoms? Ferdinand asked. None that I'm aware of. If we have to start somewhere, I'd like to get rid of this face stone phobia. It really is quite inconvenient. Yeah, I have to agree on that one. Because, yeah, if she can't use the face stone, she can't form her high beast, she can't drain mana when she needs to, when she has too much. You know, this is probably the biggest concern right now. His brow still drawn in a tight frown, Ferdinand asked me a series of questions. Which face stones scare me most, what situation made me most uncomfortable, whether I was comfortable with any magic tools other than my staff, and so on. Unprocessed face stones are the scariest, then ordinances, as I said. Seeing what might as well be a living creature turn into a face stone just reminds me of... so you have no trouble with staffs because they do not look like face stones. But you closed your eyes when using Fluterain's staff, did you not? Was it the sight of its face stone too much for you, even knowing it was just your staff transformed? I tried not to look because I didn't want to remember everything I witnessed. I see. Then you can use magic tools as long as you do not look at them. Let us try something. Ferdinand gave me a fruit, shalab, from what I could tell. I rolled it around in my hand. You seem fine with the ingredients themselves, he said. Channel your mana into it. I wish to see if you can stomach touching a face stone when you have witnessed its creation. Making a face stone. The very idea made me tremble. Ferdinand took my hand in his and encouraged me to rest on the nearby bench. It had been quite a while since I'd last used it, but it was just as hard as I remembered. The shalab in my hand suddenly felt even more imposing for some reason. Ferdinand, He sat down beside me and placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. If you find this too hard, then you may close your eyes or throw the fruit away. Okay, all this is just making me question everything, essentially, that how he's acting toward her. I mean, yes, he's concerned, because, you know, she can't really do much with the whole face stone thing happening. But at the same time, it's making me wonder. Because... as far as we know, he can act the part of a doting fiancé/husband, but can he actually genuinely be like that if he wanted to? I guess he could if he found that special someone, which I'm assuming he's found it possibly in Rosemine. Because if she's fallen in love with him and doesn't realize it, then maybe the same is for Ferdinand, because both of them are kind of like that, essentially, when they aren't good when it comes to romance. He sat down beside me and placed a... I think I said that already. His face was much closer to mine than I was used to, no doubt because I was taller now. There was concern in his light golden eyes. You're being unusually kind today. The Ferdinand I'm used to would have complained and told me to hurry up already. Yeah, yep, I'm not the only one who noticed. It really was hard to believe this was the same man who had previously forced me to go without sleep and pushed me to the point that I ended up collapsing or bedridden. Would you rather I be strict with you? He asked with a glare. So what would you rather do? Be strict? Or him being more kind to you? My answer was a resounding no. I knew you were sensitive to bloodshed and death, yet I still elected to push through the enemy and rescue Gerlach's knights, Ferdinand said. Your current state was a consequence of that decision, and now you have a fatal weakness that must be overcome. It would surely aid us both if a few kind gestures could do the trick. But I doubt things are going to be that easy. Yeah, the whole PTSD involving face stones, that's going to be a little hard to overcome. He gave me a few pats on the head. It was an awkward attempt at consolation, but it worked to ease some of the tension I was feeling. It was because you agreed to stay with us and provided your healing that Gerlach's knights survived. Do not forget that. Right. I started channeling mana into the fruit, trying to turn it into a yellow face stone, but as the transformation began, my entire body went rigid. It's only a shalab, I think that's how you pronounce it, rosemine, a simple fruit. There's nothing to be scared of. Yeah, we're gonna have to find a way for her to overcome that. How can she overcome that? That's gonna be hard to do. I clung to his words, but they weren't enough. I couldn't ignore the face stone that had appeared in my hand. I continued to force my mana into it, terrified, and it turned into gold dust in the blink of an eye, of course. It appears I can make gold dust without issue, I muttered. I guess I can help Sylvester repair the Gerlach estate after all. We are in a hidden room. There's no need to hide behind such a phony smile. I am sorry that I put you through something so unpleasant, but I now have the answers. I saw it at least. Drink a potion, then rest until my preparations are complete. So he's figured something out. Ferdinand rose to his feet, surveyed the potions on his shelf, and handed one to me. He mustn't have been lying when he told Cornelius that time was of the essence, so he then started rushing around the room, taking out and neatly lining up everything he would need for his brew. His hands didn't stop moving for even a moment. As I watched Ferdinand take out a sheet for the fey paper, I said, "Oh! Now I get why he wanted the fey paper! The copy and paste thing she could do, it only works on fey paper! He must have been planning ahead for that! Nice!" The fey paper I sent him before, I gave the potion he had given me a quick sniff. It didn't smell like any of the rejuvenation potions I was used to. "What kind of potion is this?" I asked. "A valuable kind that I use when I must eat but do not want to. You will need to have some Ahrensbach cuisine soon, correct? Drink that now while you still can." I doubted Ahrensbach's spice-heavy cooking would agree with me in my current state. I remembered the healthy dishes Letizia had given me after my 2-day slumber, and decided to drink the potion without a single complaint. "Do we know where Lady Detlinde is right now?" I asked. "She can't enter Ahrensbach's dormitory or return to the Lanzenov estate, correct?" "The Lanzenov estate contains a teleporter to the Adalgisa villa, where their princesses and the children chosen to become kings stay. If she used that, then I would assume she is there now. It is located within the Royal Academy's grounds, perhaps perfect for obtaining the Gruterscheid." Ferdinand went on to note that the original Zent who had welcomed Adalgisa had not wanted to put her quarters in the sovereignty, where he and those closest to him live. "How do you know all this?" I asked. It flowed into my mind unbidden. "If your Bible lacks such details, then good. There is no need for you to know them." For him to have acquired that knowledge from the Book of Messinora, it must not have been present in the portion I received. I performed a quick check, and indeed there was no mention of Adalgisa. "If you would, write down all the information you obtained," Ferdinand said. He pushed a low table in front of me and placed the top of the paper he had taken out. As I inspected the sheets, I noticed there was already so much information written on them. The thought that I was about to make a book raised my spirits a little. Gruterscheid. Ferdinand sat down next to me, then made his Book of Messinora and opened it. I peered inside and saw that its text was full of empty spaces, which he pointed to as he said, "Rosamund, I want you to search for these parts in your own Bible." He was on a section about country gates. I started searching for the information Ferdinand wanted. In the meantime, he took and skimmed several of the sheets resting on the table, then plucked out one incomplete page in particular. "Here," I eventually said. "By comparing our two books, I managed to find the missing text." Ferdinand inspected my Bible, then started filling in the gaps in the sheet he picked up. He was quick, but writing everything out would still take ages. "Might I suggest copying and pasting the text?" I said. "Your current approach will take far too long. We do need to be cautious of time, but does your method truly work?" "Just watch." I put the tips of my finger on my Book of Messinora, making my selection area, and then copy and place. Rosemine, the size of your letters does not match the rest of the text. What? Before now, I'd only ever pasted onto completely blank sheets of paper. I wasn't able to adjust the size to perfectly match already existing text. They don't quite fit, but it's readable enough, right? It looks inelegant. Okay, whatever! Right, even I thought that. The mismatched text looked aesthetically terrible and was, to be honest, flat out hard to read. The text is legible, but the sizing will cause problems down the line. Your magic circles will need to fit perfectly to be complete. Your no spell is unusable here. Oh, come on. Hold on a moment. Let me see whether I can shrink it down. As I said, we need to be cautious of time. It would be faster for me to do it by hand. Ferdinand had given up on my idea in the blink of an eye, but I wasn't going to crumble so easily. It's going to be really useful, trust me. I am not disregarding the idea in its entirety. We can experiment later at our leisure. As I'm told you, we do not have the time right now. But I invented it specifically as a way of saving time. The thought that we weren't going to use it now when it would prove most useful was actually depressing. Ferdinand grudgingly turned his book of Messinor to face me. In that case, attempt to plant the contents of your Bible in mind. Having to show you each page will prove much tedious, so I would appreciate a method to skip that process. However, if you are unable to manage it, I must ask that you give up for now. Got it. I'll do my best. Copy in place. I tried to use my technique as I proposed. My mana was sucked into Ferdinand's Bible, and the missing text was successfully copied across. I did it, Ferdinand! I did it! I cried, looking at him for confirmation that my method was pretty dang useful. The letters are the right size, and the pages completely filled with knowledge. Ferdinand crossed his arms, his brow drawn in a contemplative frown. It is convenient, but what? Is there a problem? He remained silent for a moment, then deliberately stood up and brought over what appeared to be 2 test tubes. Though I acknowledge the extreme convenience of your spell and accept it as the most logical use of our time, I must ask that you drink this before we continue. What are they? I asked. You've had them before. Drink them and you should have your answer. Confused, I drank the potions. The first was sweeter and went down easier than the divination potion, but I couldn't remember having tasted it before. Is this the one where he used the magic tool on you? The second, though, was another story. It was the same potion he made me drink and I ended up completely drained of mana. I didn't recognize the first, but I remember this second. I said, was there a reason you gave it to me now? I already have more than enough mana. You did not recognize the first? I see. Well, in any case, fill in the blanks as I ask you to. Vernon took a deep breath as though steeling his resolve, then turned to the next page of his book of Messinor. I found the corresponding entry in my own Bible and copied the contents over using my special method. We repeated this process again and again. Vernon, are you okay? I eventually asked. You look a little unwell. Why is he the one looking unwell? He kept holding his head and rubbing his arms. You need not worry about me. How can you say that? You're acting very strange. Could this be because you haven't rested properly since you were poisoned? You should take a break before we continue with our work here. You saw what Cornelius was like. If we leave this room, I doubt he will allow us to return. We have only until dinner, so I must ask that you prioritize the Grutershite for now. Once you have completed all the pages I need, I will carry out the brewing on my own. I wasn't going to argue with the stern glare Ferdinand was giving me, so I quickly returned to the task at hand. Copy and place, copy and place, copy and place. That will do, Ferdinand said. I should be able to manage the rest without you. Some of the steps to follow involve working with face stones, so I permit you to leave me ahead of me. He was putting on a brave face, but the way he was slumped over betrayed complete and utter exhaustion. Shouldn't you leave early? You're clearly unwell. Getting some rest before dinner could go a long way. Forget about me, just leave, Ferdinand replied, waving me away. It was kind of annoying how stubbornly he was refusing to cooperate, but this wasn't his first time trying to hide his poor health from others. If you are not unwell, then how about you transcribe your sections of the Bible into mine? Have you lost your mind? Absolutely not. Ferdinand snapped, staring at me like I was the biggest idiot in the world. Have you lost your mind? I retorted, my lips pursed in the face of this outrageous injustice. I used my new technique to fill out some of your books, so why shouldn't you fill out some of mine in return? He wasn't the only one who wanted to read the whole thing. Ferdinand grimaced and said, I refuse. Your new spell requires an abnormal pronunciation and operates on principles unknown to me. So I expect it would take me far too long to learn. I believe in you, Ferdinand. Do you remember how quickly you learned to make my water gun? Bonifacius and the others had struggled to replicate it, but not Ferdinand. I was sure he'd pick up on new spells just as easily. But he continued to refuse. If you cannot learn my spell, then I shall use it, I said. Lend me your book so that I might reproduce its text. Can you really do that on your own? Let's find out. I touched 2 fingers to Ferdinand's open Bible and used them to select the information I wanted. Ferdinand gasped and slapped my hand away before slamming his book of Messinor shut and making it disappear. What was that for? I cried. It was working. Huh? It's still too early for you. Wait until you have come of age at the right... What the fuck? What's the... I'm confused. I'm just as confused as Rosemine here on this one. Leave, no please. Huh? My eyes widened in response to the sudden change of attitude. You want me to wait 2 whole years? That's much too long, especially when I could just do it now. I'm confused. Ferdinand glared at me and shook his head. I have my reasons for refusing. To do it now would be completely unacceptable. You have your reasons, do you? Care to explain those to me? At least tell her what's going on, because I'm just as confused as she is. No, Ferdinand replied, not even attempting to play ball. Even when I peered into his eyes, silently demanding that he elaborate, he put a hand over my face and pushed me away. Do not get so close, he said. Do I really need to remind you that we are painfully short on time? Creating our magic tool should naturally come before filling out the gaps in your Bible. And my request that you leave early was for your sake. I'm about to take my brewing face stones. Ferdinand, is this Gervasio person that much of a threat? I asked. His rush to make the great strike had started with the mention of that name. He was raised to be the king of Lanzanov, right? Does that make him your brother? Ooh. Technically, biologically, yes. In an instant, the emotion vanished from Ferdinand's face. He wasn't angry or anxious. He just stared at me blankly before gazing down at his hand. He is not my brother, he said cautiously. As far as I'm aware, the 2 of us have never even met, but I do know about him. He must have been referring to knowledge he'd obtained from the Book of Messinora. Maybe he'd stared down at his hand to read from it, having forgotten that he made it disappear. Gervasio was the omni-elemental son with the most mana out of all those born in the 3 Adolgis princesses. Oh, there was 3 of them. Ah, never mind, they might not have been brothers. Okay, never mind. Ferdinand explained. Thus he was chosen to be Lanzanov's king. In other words, he has more mana than you? I find that hard to believe. Ferdinand nodded slowly. To my knowledge, he was head and shoulders above the rest during his pre-baptism measuring. By the time I was born, he had already been sent back to Lanzanov to rule. Okay, so he might not be the most man of efficient, essentially. There was a slight pause before he continued, now staring into empty space. My mother initially had me with the intention of turning me into a face stone, so she chose a partner who had the elements, but she did not rather than one with more mana. It meant I had the least mana out of all the adults. Oh, good lord. He had the least amount. And this is the guy who has the most mana in Ehrenfest. He has a ton. He's got more than Rosemine. That's saying something. She hasn't even come of age yet. Out of all the Adolgis seeds at the time, but as an omni-elemental child with balanced elements, I was best suited to become a face stone. A shiver ran down my spine, and tears welled up in my eyes. Ferdinand had most likely obtained his Book of Messinora when he was a student at the Royal Academy. I doubted that he'd wanted the information he was sharing with me, and I thought that he'd received it at such a young age was just awful. I stood up and instinctively reached out to Ferdinand. The next thing I knew, I was kneeling beside him on the bench with my arms wrapped around. Oh, he needs a hug. He definitely needs a hug. Or at least she does. Her hearing about this, she just needs a hug. You were not born to be turned into a face stone, I said. You were born to become an Ehrenfest Archduke here. That's why the gods intervened and made it so. Rosemine, let go. Ferdinand gave me a few hard pats on the back, frantically urging me to desist. I squeezed him even tighter in response. No, you need the hug, dude. Not until you understand the value of your life. The previous Ob Ehrenfest took you in because he needed you, and right now I cannot overstate how important you are to Sylvester and me. I won't let go until you acknowledge it. Fine, I understand. I understand perfectly well, so let go of me. You are far too prone to acting on your emotions. Not even I can believe it sometimes. As hard as this might be for you to understand, your appearance has caught up with you, and the world now sees you as a woman of marriageable age. Learn to act a bit more like a proper noble woman. She has been, but dude, if the 2 of them are supposed to end up technically married, according to the decree the king had sent out for him, she is acting as she should, essentially. I'd already learned to be more proper. That was why I'd stopped asking Ferdinand for emotional support hugs, but that still wasn't enough. My attempt to console him had only earned me a scolding. In any case, I must ask you to leave, Ferdinand said. I will continue making the magic tool. You should use this time to inform your retainers of your circumstances and start discussing how to minimize your everyday interactions with face stones. Discuss even brewing the face stone brooches for the Archduke Conference. This is not information to be shared with other nobles, so ensure that nobody from Ahrensbach is present when you hold these conversations. And with that, Ferdinand shooed me out of his hidden room. It seemed a little cruel that he'd just tossed me outside the moment he was done with me, but I suppose that was nothing new. It's fine. Ferdinand seems like he's doing better, at least. Rosemine, Cornelius said. He ran over the moment I passed the barrier and started checking that nothing was wrong with me. She's fine! What was he up to? He deliberately made sure we couldn't be there for it. He wasn't up to anything. You don't need to worry. The most he did was give me a checkup because he was worried about my health. No matter how little he did, it was unacceptable. An unmarried man and woman sitting alone in a hidden room is absolutely unconscionable. Cornelius went on to explain in great earnest what a shameless act we had committed. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah, because nobody could see anything. What a shameless act we had committed. It was so unacceptable, in fact, that it was reasonable grounds for everyone to assume we had engaged in premarital relations. Essentially, assuming y'all had sex in there, which is not. As unfortunate as the situation must have seemed, we hadn't had any other choice. I doubted Ferdinand would ever reveal that he had the Book of Messinora, and we'd even used ours together, so we'd absolutely needed to be alone. On top of that, we discussed my other life, and as much as Ferdinand despised it, indulged it. I was certain he wouldn't have said a word about any of that if someone else had been there. Ferdinand needed us to be alone so that he could do something of the utmost importance. I said, you need to take better care, and though I cannot reveal what I discussed with Ferdinand, what he is brewing right now, I can tell you this. He forced me out the moment he had what he needed. There was little for you to worry about. It's not... You said the way you said that. That sounded so wrong. Looking back, I tried to console Ferdinand and received a lecture for my trouble. I kind of regretted having done anything in the first place. On a more important note, I said, we must discuss the very relevant results of the medical examination Ferdinand gave me. Please gather all of my retainers. Cornelius looked between the hidden room and me before rushing out to contact the others. As he went, Eckert said, Rosemine, is Lord Ferdinand not coming out? He told me to leave because he was done with me, but he still needs to finish a brew. I should note that he did not look particularly healthy. He might also take some time to make a few restorative potions. I see. Thank you. From there, I spoke with my retainers who were accompanying me and then started toward the guest room my attendants had prepared. It was then that Cornelius came rushing back. Hartman just sent an ordinance. A scholar is calling for the Ob. An urgent message has arrived from Ehrenfest. Eckert, tell Ferdinand, I said, I will go on ahead. I was slow enough on foot that Ferdinand would probably catch up to me before I reached the Archduke's office. I tried to speed up as much as I could, but alas, as I'd expected, he was far too quick for me. I think I could do one more. Dunkelfelder's request. As soon as we arrived at the Archduke's office, a scholar informed me that the magic tool meant for emergency communication between Obs was flashing. Ferdinand stepped forward and gestured toward it. The size and shape were exactly as I remembered, but there was a cover of sorts over the top that hid the pool of water. Rosemine, close your eyes for a moment and allow me to guide you, Ferdinand said. You will need to supply the tool with your mana. Right. I closed my eyes and immediately felt Ferdinand take my hand. He touched it to get something. The water mirror, I assumed, told me to start channeling my mana into it, and then instructed me to open my eyes. I could see Sylvester in the pool of water before me. Took you long enough, he complained, having seemingly been waiting quite a while. Why weren't you in your office? Hersher sent a response from the Royal Academy. She said there were people she didn't recognize near the Scholar Building. Hersher was approaching the climax of some excellent research, so she had planned to disregard Sylvester's orders entirely. The suspicious individuals had only been spotted because Raymond, who had suddenly lost access to Ahrensbach's dorm, had decided to start sleeping in the Scholar Building. He had reported the strange sight to Hersher, who had then realized that Sylvester was probably telling the truth, and sent ordinances all over the place. It really was unusual to see strangers not wearing duchy capes at the Royal Academy. She really doesn't trust you, huh? I remarked. This has more to do with her fixation on her research. It was wise to leave Raymond there, Ferdinand said with a satisfied nod. I started to wonder whether anyone had contacted Raymond and explained why he wasn't able to enter his dormitory all of a sudden. I assume not. Sylvester continued. Hersher contacted the professor still at the Royal Academy. She also sent word to the royal family and the Sovereign Knights Order. Their response was immediate, meaning there are now black capes stationed at the Academy. Right. I said, that's good. The royals must have relaxed their guard at the sovereignty to send troops to the Royal Academy. Dunkelfelder's volunteers had already crushed Lanzanov's troops, and Sylvester had shared what we knew about our enemy's silver cloth and instant-death poison, so the invaders would surely be suppressed in no time. Sylvester gave a serious frown and shook his head. This situation isn't good at all, Rosemine. That's the very reason I chose to contact you like this. Come again? That librarian you were worried about, Solange. Nobody's been able to reach her. She might have been caught up in the commotion, or maybe she's just coincidentally unable to respond. Hersher was going to check on her, but she received an urgent ordinance from Roffin, telling her not to step foot outside her room. I said nothing in response. Small dark spots swarmed my vision. Something big is happening at the Royal Academy, Sylvester announced. I wish I could do more for you, but this report is the most Ehrenfest can provide. We don't have any manpower or resources we can spare you. I thank you ever so much for this information, I said. As we have Ahrensbach, we do not have a dormitory supervisor right now. This information might not have reached us otherwise. The moment our conversation was over, I activated the magic tool and looked back at Ferdinand. I'm going to the Royal Academy's library. Ferdinand shook his head. That is not something I can permit. How do you expect to leave Ahrensbach in your current state? He was referring to the fact that I couldn't ride my high beast, but still, I was deeply concerned about Solange, Schwartz, and Weiss. I should put Schwartz and Weiss in combat mode, then they can protect Professor Solange, I mused. I would simply need to pour mana into the face stone buttons that decorated the 2 face stones. Hello? You can't touch face stones! I expect the 2 shoe mills are quite strong. My own played an important role during the Battle of the Temple. Ferdinand scoffed. He had researched Schwartz and Weiss when designing the base schematics for my battle-ready shoe mills. They are magic tools made by a Zent of the distant past to slaughter Zent candidates. Mere riffraff would not stand a chance against them. They certainly are strong, and that means Professor Solange must be safe, right? I wanted some reassurance, but Ferdinand cast his eyes down. As I understand that the 2 shoe mills cannot enter combat mode with that mana, and an order from their master, I am unsure what Professor Solange would manage to accomplish on her own. He shook his head, then his voice took on a much colder hue. Nonetheless, I simply cannot allow you to leave Ahrensbach. How much can you really do for her as you are now? Before I could respond, the emergency contact magic tool started to flash again. Dunkelfelger, Ferdinand muttered. We should agree to speak with them. Rosemine, close your eyes. He took my hand and pressed it against the mirror's face, causing my fellow Ob to appear on the surface of the water. Ob Ahrensbach, the man said, I am delighted to see you well on this most auspicious day. Hendler reported to me about your race at battle. She said in no uncertain terms that your performance was splendid and a sight to behold. Few words can describe the astonishment that took me when I saw every one of our volunteers had remained alive. This was the first time I'd seen Ob Dunkelfelger speak so politely. I was taken aback that I could only blink at him in response. Though I realize these are busy times, he continued, a most pressing matter has required me to contact you. Are aware of what is happening at the Royal Academy. Ahrensbach is missing its dormitory supervisor, but we did just receive a message from Ob Ehrenfest, I said. He told us that suspicious individuals from Lonzenov, I would assume, were spotted near the Scholar Building, and that both the royal family and the Sovereign Knights Order had been made aware. He also explained that Professor Solange at the library has not been responding to attempts to contact her. I wish to confirm her safety sooner rather than later, but as the Sovereign Knights Order has been dispatched, I assume people are already looking into it. That seems unlikely, the Ob replied with a frown. According to Roffin, our dormitory supervisor, the Sovereign Knights sent to the Royal Academy are working with the intruders. What? Excuse me? Detlinde was seen among the suspicious individuals, but the Knights made no attempts to capture her. Roffin hadn't known whether the order was working for or against the crown, so he had sent word of the situation back to his duchy and requested orders. To make matters worse, we find ourselves unable to contact the Zent at this current moment. Does that mean... Lady Rosemine, we hereby request that you, a legitimate Zent candidate and the owner of the Gruterscheid, do everything in your power to defend the Royal Academy. Outsiders must not be allowed within its grounds. Here in Jürgen Schmidt, that is an unbendable law. I swallowed dryly. Is that not the duty of the Zent? You are a Zent candidate, dude. Ask us to take action. We will do as you command. As a Zent sword, Dunkelfelger shall guard the Academy's guarantee the Academy's safety. That is not something we can respond to here and now, Ferdinand interjected, having addressed the Ob before I could even open my mouth. Rosemine might have attained the Gruterscheid, but she has died Ahrensbach's foundation and thereby became its Ob. She cannot give such an order. Lord Ferdinand, do you not understand the importance of the Royal Academy? Outsiders are ravaging it as we speak. There is no time to be so passive. Detlinde would need the Gruterscheid to become the Zent, which meant the Royal Academy's library was the most dangerous place of all. I suspected it was receiving the same treatment as when the Lonzenovians ravaged the Ahrensbach's noble quarter, which made me even more worried about Solange and the 2 shoe mills who must have been there all alone. Ferdinand, Professor Solange is in the library, I said. And what about Professor Herscher? She's at the Royal Academy too. Herscher had told various people about the outsiders and requested the aid of both the royal family and the Sovereign Knights Order. If the Knights truly had turned coat, then she and Raymond were at great risk as well. Professor Herscher might be safe now, but she's still in a dangerous position, I said. If Ob Dunkelfelger is offering us his aid, should we not accept it and go straight to the Royal Academy? Fool! You are in the most danger of all, Ferdinand snapped. He then sized up the Ob on the other side of the water mirror, his expression harsh before continuing in a quiet voice. I do not deny the urgency of our situation. The Royal Academy's importance is abundantly clear to me, but I still cannot back your proposal. If you did act under orders but proved unable to rescue the royal family before Detlinde's group acquired the Gruterscheid and died the country's foundation, then Rosemine will be branded a traitor and insurgent. Ferdinand added under his breath that the royal family might not even genuinely thank me for saving them. In his words, they would most likely take advantage of the opportunity to bring me and the Gruterscheid into their ranks, declaring that they would charge me with treason or something equally unreasonable otherwise. Thinking back on my dealings with this country's royals, I couldn't help but concur. I wonder, Ferdinand continued, how will the Zent's so-called sword respond when its petition is found to have put Rosemine in such a grave predicament? You will abandon her to side with the royals, I suspect. Ferdinand, aren't you being unreasonably rude right now, I asked. They wouldn't do something so cruel, not when they made the proposal in the first place. This is the reason you are called overkind and naive, Ferdinand sneered, then returned his attention to the water mirror. The Ob of a duchy with as long a history as Dunkelfelger's has certainly made many cruel decisions for the sake of its people. I do not blame you. Your weakness is not formidable in your role, but I will not allow you to cast Rosamine aside. No matter how dire the circumstances, Dunkelfelger cannot send its knights to the sovereignty without being ordered to, the Ob retorted. You intend to sit back and watch Detlinde and the Lanzanavians run amok until some foreigner obtains their own Grujischeit. As the royal family cannot be reached, we must turn to a Zent candidate to send us into battle. Only she can save Jürgenschmidt. The Ob had said a lot, but he hadn't refuted the claim that he would cruelly abandon me. He had asserted that his duchy would protect the Royal Academy, but not that he would do anything to aid me in the worst-case scenario. On top of that, he had addressed me only as a Zent candidate, as though deliberately trying to put some distance between us. Not quite, Ferdinand muttered, as once I turned to look at him. I wasn't the only one with the Book of Messinora. There was someone far better suited, dang it, to becoming the Zent whose book had just recently been filled with all the information he would need to rule. But surely he wouldn't. There didn't exist a world in which Ferdinand wanted to become the Zent. His dream was to live peacefully in Ahrensbach with his various laboratories. I clung to his chest, terrified of what he was about to say. Ferdinand, wait, that's not... You shall take the throne, Ob Dunkelfelger. What? Excuse me? The Ob replied, equally as shocked. I'm confused here. My mind went blank as I tried to process this completely unexpected turn of events. I gazed up at Ferdinand, seeking an explanation of some kind, but saw that his lips were twisted in a smile. Did you not say that Lady Hannelore spoke to you? Ferdinand asked. Rosamine is a divine avatar of Messinora, here to return the Grujischeit to Jürgenschmidt and revive praying to the gods. Her duty is not to become the Zent, but to grant the Grujischeit to whomever she deems most worthy. I didn't know what to say. Ferdinand was spouting absolute nonsense, all while looking the Ob dead in the eye. Ferdinand continued, such a great demonstration of strength in the presence of a divine avatar is the same as agreeing to accept the Grujischeit from Rosamine. As the Sovereign's Knight Order has sided with our enemies, if our attempts to save the royal family ends in failure, then you will need to take the throne. You are welcome to petition Rosamine again, but only if you are ready for such consequences. The man in the water mirror stared at us, stunned. But I am Dunkelfelger's Ob, and Rosamine is Ahrensbach's, Ferdinand replied with a thin smile. Do you sincerely wish to save Jürgenschmidt from this crisis, no matter the cost, or are you merely using Rosamine so that you can rampage through the academy? If we are to continue this conversation, I must know your true intentions. I was reading the subtle undertones of this conversation loud and clear. Just as Ob Dunkelfelger wanted to protect his duchy and people, we wanted to protect Ahrensbach and ourselves. I shall say it again, Ferdinand continued. There is a chance you will emerge from this incident the next Zent. You will need someone to replace you as Ob in such a case, so I would advise you to discuss with your first wife before we take things any further. I shall also note that very few duchies would appreciate you acting alone in this matter. Have you broached your intentions with them? Ferdinand wasn't advising the Ob at all. He was stating unequivocally that this wasn't a decision to be made lightly. And above all else, Ferdinand said, Rosamine has just returned from Ehrenfest. Her health would not allow her to march into another battle so soon. We also prioritize the return of your volunteers, so Ahrensbach's knights have yet to come back from Bindewald. Even if we did accept your proposal, we would not be prepared to act on it. He took my hand and then declared, we shall await your response tomorrow at third bell. We don't have time for that, dude! His rant finally over, Ferdinand quietly asked me to deactivate the water mirror. The Ob had yet to recover from his confusion, so I gave him a simple, good day, before closing my eyes and doing as instructed. That should give us a little more time, but it means I will need to complete my brew tonight without fail. Ferdinand said with a sigh once he'd made sure we were alone. Then he glared at me and snapped, Do not be so quick to accept the petitions of other duchies. You have resolved to become the next Ob Ahrensbach. You must challenge anyone who calls you a Zent candidate. But I'm worried about the library. Nobody can reach Professor Solange. Dunkelfelger's intentions aside, I was extremely concerned about what was happening at the Royal Academy. So concerned, in fact, that I would have rushed straight over there if not for my current lack of strength and mana. The aid of a greater duchy would only boost my chances of success. I suspect she is fine, Ferdinand assured me. Ordinances have not refused to fly to her. We can also trust Dunkelfelger to take action. Theirs is not a duchy that will remain inactive when they can take matters into their own hands. I cannot say how long their preparations will take, but the Ob did not speak out against my target of third bell tomorrow. Consider tonight a most crucial opportunity to get some rest. We might not have another for quite some time to come. Thus, rather than worrying about everyone else, I would advise you to take a moment to focus on your own health. You teleported so many people today that you need not just potions, but a good night's sleep. But I might have some more bad dreams, I muttered. My body was crying out for rest, but I was afraid of what it might entail. Ferdinand wore a slight frown. Do you need another potion to get you to sleep? Not one that'll give me terrifying nightmares. I can't imagine a worse way to wake up. As much as your health has improved, you are on the verge of collapse. I suspect you will need potions just to make it through dinner. Do not put such great faith in your stamina when it barely met the bare minimum to begin with. Ferdinand had handed me a kindness-infused potion. He was right about my health, so my only choice was to accept it. Over dinner, Letizia told us the events that had culminated in Detlinde's furious letter. Some people had tried to open the door to the Lanzanov estate from the other side, and the Knights in the Royal Academy's teleportation room had received ordinances asking what was going on. Letizia had refrained from providing any answers, having wanted to consult me first, which had eventually earned us that colorful correspondence from Detlinde. Continue to ignore them, I said. Make sure they receive no information of value. Understood, Letizia replied with a nod. She looked tired and unwell, and not just because she was busy. She wore the same strained, concorded expression I'd seen from Melkor that morning. It wasn't the kind of visage one would expect of a child. Oh, these fish, I said. The fishermen you saved sent them to the castle with words of gratitude, Letizia explained. Lord Ferdinand informed me of your preferences, Lady Rosemont, so I did my best to follow them. Are these meals to your taste? Most of the dishes being served were covered in so many spices that I couldn't even tell what was buried under them. Instead, my eyes were drawn to some plainly salted white fish. Letizia had apparently been uneasy about serving something so simple, but she had swallowed her fears and persevered. My appreciation of this recipe is considered strange even in Ehrenfest, but its simplicity really highlights the flavor of the fish, I said. You must have asked the chefs to prepare it for me despite it seeming so unusual to them. Thank you. And thank you, Ferdinand, for still remembering my taste after all this time. I considered it the best choice while you are still unaccustomed to Ahrensbach's cuisine, he said. Indeed, the overabundance of spice customary of Ahrensbach's cooking was been far too stimulating for me. I took only very small portions of the other dishes, but devoured the salted fish even with my lack of appetite. I was satisfied with my meal, but the same couldn't be said for Letizia. Though she spoke with a smile, her cutlery had barely moved at all. Lady Letizia, could you come here for a moment, I asked, beckoning her over. Bring one of your guard knights if you would. She blinked at me a few times before she complied, the knight accompanying her tense step in preparation for what was to come. You were dragged into something awful, I said, yet you have continued to work so astoundingly hard. Even in our absence, your dedication to protecting Ahrensbach could not be ignored. It is with gratitude in my heart that I ask you to grant me, if I ask to grant you Slofstrom's blessings, so that you might rest more easily tonight. Letizia's expression changed and she shook her head. You need not waste your mana on me, Lady Rosamond. The sentiment's enough. Is that so? Very well, then. Letizia went to take her leave, but I wouldn't let her get away that easily. I took out my staff and said, O Slofstrom, god of dreams, may Lady Letizia be blessed with pleasant sleep and joyous dreams. The white light of a blessing rained down upon her, and at once her eyes grew heavy. Letizia wavered in place for a moment, then started to collapse. Her guard knight caught her before she could reach the ground. For such a minor blessing to have worked this well, she must have spent days unable to sleep, I said. Please give her time to rest. As you wish, Lady Rosemine. The knight picked up Letizia and exited the room. Letizia's attendants hurried along behind them. Come, Rosemine, Ferdinand said, extending a hand to me like it was second nature to him. He must have mastered the art of escorting women during his year and a half of Detlinde, a tremendous win for the old adage that practice makes perfect. Ferdinand, I said. He had given me one hand, and then used the other to cover my eyes. Oh, he's doing it to you, too! Oh, Schlofstrom, god of dreams, may Lady Rosemary be blessed with pleasant sleep and joy. He did it to you, too! Ha ha. The dark spots in my vision were suddenly filled with white light. My mind cleared, and the immense weight on my shoulders vanished. By the time I realized I couldn't feel my feet anymore, I was already being carried away like Letizia. Rest, Ferdinand urged me. Do not fight Schlofstrom's blessing. You will not have any bad dreams tonight. Smart idea! Are you awake, Lady Rosemine? Lizetta asked, a hand on her chest. You look so much better. I was feeling better, too. Refreshed, even. Schlofstrom's blessing really had given me a good night's sleep. We might need to use that from now on for a while. We had decided to eat breakfast in our rooms, as my attendants brought me a plate of salted fish. They must have thought I'd really loved it or something. I started eating when my retainers explained that last night while I was asleep they had received a lecture from Ferdinand about my current state and the best way to deal with it. We were also made aware of the dangerous situation at the Royal Academy and the request Ob Dunkelfucker made of you. We knights were ordered to be ready to sortie at any moment. If you accept the Ob's request, I suspect you will need to come as well, Lady Rosemine. Before the Civil War, the Zent used to travel around Jurgenschmidt each year to open and close all the country gates. Kernberger's has been closed for a very long time, though, so this isn't something we've ever experienced. Using a Grutschite, one could apparently teleport straight to the Sovereignty. Teleporting from the Lanzanov estate to the Sovereignty would essentially be like diving headfirst into enemy headquarters. Not that we could even use a teleporter right now. I would need to brew registration brooches with my mana for us to pass through Ahrensbach's dorm. So we planned to teleport via our country gate instead, as the Abba would naturally need to be there. Once you have eaten, Lady Rosamine, you are permitted to rest until third bell, Lady said. I even have an Arensbach book for you to read. Oh my, I exclaimed. Would it really be wise of me to spend this time reading? I assumed Ferdinand prepared it for me, so it must be for the best, right? As I stared at the book now sitting on my desk, I tried to remember the last time I'd sat down to read. According to Lord Ferdinand, you are to rest as much as you can before Obdunkelfelker contacts you again. Okay. I'm going to have to end this up here. I'll see you guys in the next one.